If you have been watching a lot of The Undertaker as he has been doing his most recent press rounds and interviews, you may have noticed he doesn't really talk that much about the Ministry of Darkness. Now, I won't lie, as a kid I absolutely loved this group because I just totally bought in to what they were doing and went, okay, I guess they come from hell and I guess they're just in some kind of cult. And when you are just like a fetus that has popped out of your mother's womb, for some reason you think that's badass. The reason I don't think it is a much chatted about topic though is that when you go back through it now, it is an absolute roller coaster of wrestling madness. I mean, it's clearly just put together so The Undertaker has something to do, and also that he has his own group, because in the late 90s in WWE and WCW, it was just group. It takes so many bizarre turns as well, to the point The Undertaker just became a demon. It was a little bit that I wrote it when I was 10. It does give us some content to dive into, however, so this is why The Undertaker's Ministry of Darkness didn't work. And of course, I have broken it up into a handy list form. Number 10, the members. Right, on the 11th of January 1999, we kind of got our first glimpse of this brand new Undertaker, and he was talking about sacrificing people and going to the bad place and the darkness and all of that. And then he found his good buddy Dennis Knight, he sat him down, he cut his wrists, and he made him drunk his blood. And because of that, he went from being Dennis Knight to Midian. I mean, we really could just end the video here. Now, this isn't a knock on Midian, but before he became Midian, he was part of the Godwins, and his name was Pig or Hog, whichever one he was. And then after that, he was Naked Midian. So in a company, when you had The Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Big Show, Triple H, and Mankind, well, he didn't really stand out like a super duper star. This then continued with Undertaker's next victim when he took Mabel and turned him into Viscera, and all he did there was give him some new contact lenses. Getting the Brood on board was a lot better because that just fit, and it gave the vehicle for Edge and Christian to get better and better while they were on the road. But as a kicking off point, well, we just needed some bigger names. I mean, take the Corporation, for example. They had dudes permeated throughout who could main event a show, and apart from The Undertaker and the Ministry of Darkness, you didn't have it over there. So it was down to the dead man to carry the load, which again was the point, but it just wasn't enough. Number 9, where the members were positioned. The whole point of the Ministry of Darkness was so that The Undertaker could take over the WWE, and I think relocate it to hell. I'm 99% sure he said that once. Maybe you get really good tax breaks in hell. The plan to get there, though, seemed to be just to take some of his guys and have them win matches on Shotgun Saturday Night, which is what the Acolytes did when they took on Scott D'Amore, you remember him from Impact fame, and Larry Drew. And then on other shows, the Brood were beating up Jeff Jarrett and they were pouring blood on Deborah. I don't think this is going to get us to where we need to be. Midian was then running backstage with an eyeball in a jar as he attacked the likes of Road Dogg's and Al Snow, and you just wanted to put an arm around them and say, look, I think you really need to be aiming a little bit higher there. What you're doing isn't helping anything. So sooner rather than later, the real issue became clear, and it was just a way to get The Undertaker on television, because otherwise he got lost in the shuffle. Or maybe he just really enjoyed Sunday Night Heat. Number 8, The Undertaker's injury. Another note for your trivia brains, the Ministry of Darkness was always created so we could protect The Undertaker and once again give him something to do as he nursed and healed up from a bunch of injuries. Because following Survivor Series 1998, where he had taken on Stone Cold Steve Austin, he needed to leave, he needed to get some surgery, and now he was back and we needed to do this. Again though, what we needed was a leader that was able to intimidate other people and kick their ass in an actual match. And we couldn't do that, and because of it, they were all just having these mid-card level fights. You never had the big, oh my gosh, main event, I can't believe it, because you needed The Undertaker to do that, and we didn't have The Undertaker in a position to do it. I mean, they had little to do at the 1999 Royal Rumble, and at the St. Valentine's Day Massacre in 1999, it was the Big Boss Man versus Midian. And do you know what main evented that show? Austin versus McMahon. The fans didn't care about anything else. This really did need Taker destroying Falls early on, because by the time he could do this, all the other damage had been done. Number 7, killing the Big Boss Man. And then when finally we were able to pull the trigger, we went way too far. Nerds. And sure, Taker has always pushed the limits and the boundaries of what sports entertainment could be, and 9 times out of 10, it has rocked. But I don't think anybody wanted or expected him to beat the Big Boss Man at WrestleMania and then tie a rope around his head and hang him from the top of the cell. It was too much. It was way too much. I mean, the last shot you saw was the Big Boss Man just swinging like this. I mean, how they ever justified bringing him back to TV, I don't know. He was dead. It got worse because 24 hours later on Raw, they were stalking Sable. When that failed, they kidnapped Ryan Shamrock, and then they broke into Stephanie McMahon's house and fumbled through her personal things. And then The Undertaker turned around and went, you know what? I should marry her. What baloney was this? Within a few weeks, they just turned into a bunch of creeps, and I don't think that was the idea. Number 6, the lack of top matches. The Hart Foundation had great matches. DX had great matches. The NWO had great matches. The Four Horsemen had great matches. You see where I'm going with this. But when you look at the Ministry of Darkness, they didn't really have any great matches. We've mentioned the Mideon versus Bossman and the Undertaker versus Bossman 2, but compare that with a year prior when we were having Taker versus Mankind in the Hell in a Cell at King of the Ring. If you had done that with the new demonic version, after he had chucked Mick Foley to his death, he would have had to have stood on the top of the Hell in a Cell and just gone, ha 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 ha, I told you I was going to do this, I just threw him to hell. This continuing after WrestleMania in 1999, it was Undertaker versus Ken Shamrock. That was a fine match, it's perfectly watchable, but it's not really the banger you'd be expecting. And this just kind of ties into the other points we've already made. Although The Undertaker looked intimidating, when push came to shove, you didn't really need to fear him. Number 5, lost in the shuffle. When we did kick this off, The Undertaker said he was going to take over the WWE and he was going to go after Vincent Kennedy McMahon. You're like, yeah, that makes all the sense in the world. That's what you would do. But at that time, Vince McMahon was feuding with Stone Cold Steve Austin. And given that Stone Cold Steve Austin had just beaten up The Undertaker, it meant he just stood there and he didn't do anything because it didn't tie into the stories WWE were trying to tell. So this was more about being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And while drafting the likes of Kane or Mick Foley to feud with The Undertaker would have been rad, we had done that to death in 1999, so they also had to be put to one side. And that's nobody's fault. You can't not do a feud just in case you need to do it in the future. But again, take WrestleMania 15. On top, you have The Rock taking on the Rattlesnake, and then just bang in the middle, it is the Big Boss Man versus The Undertaker. That and his Shamrock match meant that he was now doing programs with guys in the middle of the card, which meant the Ministry of Darkness felt like it should be in the middle of the card. That is just wrestling maths, and also it's about the justification for these things. We didn't need to have the Boss Man feud in a Hell in a Cell. For one day on TV, Vince McMahon had just gone, Hell in a Cell, and that was enough to put it in Hell in a Cell. Number 4, repetition. On the 7th of December 1998 Raw, The Undertaker hunted down Stone Cold Steve Austin, tied him to his Undertaker symbol, lifted him in the air, and the show went off air as he was going and looking like an absolute crazy person, and it was pretty cool. Months later though, after he had a brand new crew, he tried to do this again with, of course, the Big Boss Man, and the Big Boss Man just fought his way out of it, and he ran off. Then later they tried to do it with Ryan Shamrock, and even though they got her in the air, we only saw it for 2 seconds, and then Raw cut to a commercial break. When we were back also, nobody ever discussed it again, so we had officially arrived at the law of diminishing returns. If you watch any of my videos, you know I flippin' love the law of diminishing returns. This also started to happen with their beatdowns, because they were going after dudes that weren't in the main event, and they would come out the other side worse off. So actually, as it turned out, The Undertaker would have been better by himself, and not just associating with these stupid minions. Number 3, there wasn't an evolution. When The Undertaker won the WWF title at Over the Edge 1999, you could have said, okay, cool, now we can end the Ministry of Darkness. Because he'd done it, he got his hands on the biggest prize in the game. Well done, team, well done, we did it. Even though this isn't what we said we wanted to do at the start, who cares? What would have been better though is if we had used all of this time to try and get some of the other guys over in the group, but we didn't. The whole point of the Ministry of Darkness was to get The Undertaker the WWF title. He then lost it, vanished from TV, and when he came back, he was now a biker American badass, and none of this was ever talked about again. I mean, we've already mentioned Mideon's job after this was to be a naked guy who ran around with a bum bag covering his penis, so don't tell me that he benefited from this, and even Edge and Christian did better once they were out of the group. And it was the same with the likes of the APA, so in terms of looking towards the future, well, we didn't do that at all now, did we? Number 2, the corporate ministry. So this is a hard one. Why? Because I love the theme song, the entrance song, when it comes to the corporate ministry. It has way too much of Shane McMahon going, ha ha, yeah, yeah. But it is so flipping catchy. But yes, in 1999, The Undertaker made a pact with Shane O'Mac that the corporation and the ministry would come together to become the corporate ministry, and I bet the Big Boss Man was well happy with this. He was like, dude, that guy tried to kill me, and now I gotta be his friend? You know what, I quit. You also got to see the incredible visual of the likes of Viscera stood next to Pete Gas, and did that tickle me? But ultimately, this destroyed the Ministry of Darkness, because they wanted to take down the WWE, and now they were associated with them, and really this was the death knell. After about 10 seconds of this, it was all gone. It also just meant you had a lot of people just stood around doing nothing with their hands in their pockets, and again, we've already talked about that. They just became background noise. It even pushed Taker down a peg or two, because when it came to promo segments, Shane O'Mac would talk, then Triple H would talk, And third on that list was Taker. So in the fans' eyes, they're like, okay, he's number 3. He was sacrificing dudes before this, and now he can't even get the microphone when he wants it. And again, just to double down on it, because it annoys me when I think about it, he said he wanted to destroy World Wrestling Entertainment, and now he's hanging out with the chairman's son. Give me a break. Number 1, the higher power. And talking of that, we do have to discuss the higher power. Now, in many ways, this is the greatest thing ever for all the wrong reasons, but I will never get bored of seeing Vince McMahon de-hood himself and just shout, "It was me, Austin! It was me all along," with some of the best facial expressions you will ever see in your damn life. Don't ever try and explain this to anyone either, because it basically goes, Vince McMahon created the Ministry of Darkness in order to kill his family, and then he would try and save his family just so Stone Cold Steve Austin would help him, but ultimately he was actually trying to kill his family, but he wasn't. Also, it was just such a waste of a reveal. Never forget that it was always a McMahon in this position, and everybody was done with the McMahon family at this stage, but you could have put a brand new body in this role and they would have become a star. It was meant to be Christopher Daniels at one stage, but Vince looked at him and went, "No, pal, he's too small." Well, that was that. It really did finish the whole thing off because Taker had now been completely undermined as he'd aligned himself with the boss, and like a couple of months later, he was in the Unholy Alliance, whatever it was called, with the Big Show, and all he did was talk about how they were in the desert carrying motorcycles over their shoulders. I mean, if we were going to do a list about weirdest promos ever, that would probably be number 1. It'd also be number 1 in longest promos ever. It goes around about 72 years. Now, don't forget to leave a comment below and let us know what you thought about the Ministry of Darkness, and let's face it, they were pretty badass. In terms of story, it made no sense. Like the video, share the video, hit the subscribe button, head over to whatculture.com where you can read articles like this, follow What Culture on Twitter, What Culture WWE, and watch more videos here on What Culture Wrestling. My name is Simon for What Culture. Thank you as always for joining me. I will see you soon.